Today, I'm sitting down with Will from D&D Shorts. As the name of his channel implies, he creates YouTube shorts that cover Dungeons and Dragons builds and tips, as well as longer form analysis videos on how to improve your game. Today, we talk about our wish lists for Dungeons and Dragons 5.5, how to make D&D feel more epic and heroic during your own games, and finally, how to balance being powerful and being afraid. Without further ado, sit back, relax. You are listening to Roll for Insight. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Roll for Insight. Will from D&D Shorts, thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Hey, thanks Crispy, thanks for having me. Hey everybody.
Of course. So, we've got a tradition here on Roll for Insight, a question we always ask. So, Will, you gotta tell me, what is your D&D pet peeve? It's not something that's gonna break up a friendship or a group, but it's just something that makes you go, why'd you do that?
Yeah, okay, yeah. So my biggest pet peeve, I'll tell you this. The problem with D&D that I have, any effect that takes you out of the game, I hate. So paralysis, stunned, anything like that. If I'm ever stunned in a game, like I play in a 6-person game weekly. I usually do 3 games a week. There's a couple of games I play with friends, and then there's a game I DM for people in my Discord and Patreon. And if I'm ever playing a game and there's like 6 of us, it can be like 45 minutes till your turn. And then if some random monk stunning strikes me and I fail that con save, it's like, oh, okay, so that's 45 minutes of my life I've got to wait for my turn to come back around to have another chance at that save. So my pet peeve in D&D is any kind of effect that stuns a player or takes a player out of the game. I hate that. I wish it wasn't in the game. I feel like those effects, they're for players to use on enemies. They're not for DMs to use on players. That's my pet peeve. And I never give my monsters that I design, never give them stunning effects because I think it's just so... it really sucks
Oppressive.
As a player to be told you can't play the game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very oppressive. I was watching, have you seen Knights of Evening Star with Mark Humes?
I haven't.
But yeah, and no hate on Mark Humes. Like, he's awesome as a DM. And the game is really, really good in general. But there was one fight where I was like, man, if I was a player in that fight, I would not be happy. Essentially, they were fighting a Medusa. And have you run a Medusa before?
I've never run a Medusa actually, no. But I do have a version of one that I'm writing for a campaign right now, but I haven't quite looked into it yet. I'm guessing they can petrify people, right? They've got to be able to turn people to stone.
So it's a pretty fair guess. Yeah, they can petrify people, but there's a twist. Essentially, if you fail the con saving throw on their petrifying gaze, if you fail by more than 5, you get instantly petrified. So what happened in the game was somebody rolled, he failed by more than 5. But Mark forgot about the whole, if you fail more than 5, you get petrified thing. And he moved on. And then a couple turns later, he's like, oh, wait, you failed by more than 5. Now you're petrified forever. And the guy's like, oh. And he was out of the fight because you're petrified. He's out of the fight for, the rest of the entire thing. Now, he lets him back in because the guy's got, a patron, a warlock patron, so the patron got him back into the battle. But, I mean, still, if I was that player, I'd be like, man, that sucks.
It is so brutal. The reason is because the human response, if someone tells you you can't play a game, for whatever reason, because you're paralyzed, because you're stunned, whatever, what people do is the response is to say, well, screw it, I don't want to play. If you're trying to get invested into a game and someone says, slam on the gear, nope, you can't do that, it's like, okay, well, I don't want to then. Screw this. Why am I even playing? That's not what you want to have. When I'm running a D&D game, this is kind of my whole philosophy around D&D anyway, is I feel like the players should feel like superheroes. There should never be a hard no in D&D unless it's going to ruin the game for everyone. It should always be, maybe you can't quite do that, but you can do this. And yeah, these stun effects, oh my god, yeah, they just lock it down so much. So yeah, that's my pet peeve anyway. It's like a mechanical thing.
Absolutely. So you mentioned that you run D&D like you want to make your players into heroes. How do you, as a DM, try to get players to both feel like the pressure of a fight, but also make them feel powerful, because you want D&D to have some kind of risk, some kind of tension, that thrill that comes from, taking down the boss while the party have like 5 hit points left. It's much more satisfying to beat an escape room when you have 5 seconds left on the clock than when you have 10 minutes left on the clock. You know what I mean? So how do you balance that? Make them feel like epic heroes, but at the same time make them feel the tension in the battle.
Yeah, I think that's the fine line that DMs have to walk, is finding that limit, because you don't want to kill your players, but you want them to feel like they could be killed at any moment. Suck or save spells are pretty bad for this, because it essentially turns, are you going to, if it's like you fail this saving throw, you die. And there's a lot of no fun spells that kind of do the same thing, like Power Word Kill, where you just kill people instantly. They're pretty bad. I usually think the best way to, and I'm giving away the secrets here, but like when I DM, I take a very fluid attitude to hit points, to the boss monster hit points, because I kind of, if a boss monster is on, say, 7 hit points left, right, and everyone's doing just fine, then I'm thinking like, okay, let's just give him a little bit more. Let's wait until someone does something really cool to finish this guy off, like. I can have him do a big breath weapon attack. If it's a dragon, a big breath weapon attack, get everyone down nice and low, and then try and give people a lot of opportunities to pull off like a big move or on a crit. And it's like, how do you want to do this? And I think having that fluid attitude to the fight and being able to react on the fly, that's why traditionally D&D DMs roll behind screens, right? Like, I'm a big believer in just flat out lying to my players. Like, if I want to keep them on their toes, but I think that's fine as long as you're always on the player's side, like which I am. I want the players to win. I think if you're hiding your roles from the players, and you hear some horror stories about DMs who are kind of like they're against their players, it's like a fight, like a DM versus player situation, that can get really nasty. But if you're pushing for this like high drama, high intensity, then keeping the boss's hit points to yourself, and maybe giving them a little bit of extra oomph just to knock the players down, is a really good way of doing that. And then essentially, I try and create these moments in fights, like a big moment where if a player crits, I'm going to make it really matter, that kind of thing, and give them those opportunities. I think that's kind of how you got to do it, is find these moments for people to hang on to.
If I was about to say, if I know that like the players definitely earned this like crushing win. Like, one time there was a boss that I set up at level 2. It's like that time where you're walking through the world and you see something in the distance that's way too powerful than you, and you need to like avoid it and sneak around it. I did that at session 2 in my campaign, and then like 50 sessions down the line, they found that monster and they fought it, and it had this big build up. It had been turned into something even more powerful. It was a cadaver collector from, I think, Mordenkainen's, and the fight was supposed to be epic, but because my friend had taken Bigby's hand, he could just push the creature away off a cliff. And I was like, well, dang. But at the end of the day, I mean, I realized, like, that sucked. Like, this monster that I built up for so long gets, like, absolutely wrecked. But first and foremost, like, there's no way that I can get the creature out of that. Like, he earned that. He took Bigby's hand, he used it in the way it was supposed to be used, he realized that the terrain allowed for him to do this, and, this creature had been built up for so long, but at the same time, the party had been spending so long getting more powerful. I'd been giving them all of these relics and artifacts so that they can become better heroes to fight against a bigger threat, so having them absolutely destroy a monster that they were deathly afraid of before, I thought it was good.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It is finding those superhero moments, and that is a superhero moment. Like, at that point, the bad thing to do would be to say, no, you can't do that, right? Because that's an awesome moment that you'd be ripping away. So yeah, that's amazing. I think a problem of a trap that a lot of DMs fall into is we get too attached to our monsters, or we get too attached to the homebrew world. To the extent that we kind of, when someone does something that like kills a monster that we've got big plans for, we're like, oh my god, no, you can't kill him. I've got to do something. No, he can do this. He can fly. He teleports away or something. Whereas having the confidence to give a player that moment when they do something creative like that, it's like, hell yeah, man! Like, you own it, and those are the bits that people remember at the end of the day. Although sometimes it can be a bit like. If players are just steamrolling every single monster you throw in them in their way, eventually they might get bored. You do need to find.
You need to figure out a way.
Again, there's that balance too. Sometimes fights are epic. Sometimes fights are sudden and like bam, 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 your guy's dead. Both are really fun.
Yeah, I was watching a Ginny D video with Mark Humes again, and she was talking about like one bad thing she did as a DM, which was like have the party go against an aboleth when they were way too weak. But, unless everyone died, which you said no one died, so unless everyone died, that's a great thing to do. Like, show the players that that there are things in this world that are way too powerful for them and that they need to get more powerful. Especially since Nabaleth is like challenge rating like 10. That means that the players were probably something like level 7, 8. So they were technically too weak for this creature, and shows that they need to get more powerful. Show them that there are things in this world that are more powerful than them, and the tension of the game will just naturally be increased. You don't need to do that every fight, but just every few sessions, show them like a dragon in the distance or a rock flying over the mountains. And I mean, you can have a really good few sessions. But yeah, as a player, you make a lot of really cool character builds, and it feeds back into what we were talking about, like the power fantasy of being a hero in this world. These builds are really creative and kind of out there. I'm curious, how do you come up with this kind of stuff? I mean, do you just get an idea, like you're reading through fiction, like, oh, hey, I can make that in D&D, or do you just like spontaneously look at character options and see if you can combine them together into some mad Frankenstein experiment? What's your methodology for creating crazy class combinations?
There's two main ways, I guess. The first way, the most organic way, is to think of something that would be interesting or funny. On our Discord recently, we were chatting about, is it possible to live inside a gelatinous cube? Because it does, like, I can't remember how. I remember it does, I think, an average of, like, is it 66 damage a turn or something? I can Google it, whatever. It does a lot of acid damage every turn, basically. But if you could negate that acid damage without going like crazy high level, finding some black dragon mask that gives you immunity to acid.
Yeah, I was thinking of the black dragon mask when you said that.
Yeah, which is cool. But I try these days to make sure my builds are coming online by about level 9, just so people can actually play them. But what I ended up doing is taking that concept and I flipped it and turned it into a simpler creature that you could live inside of, which is like how to live inside a giant toad in D&D. And you can kind of use a giant toad as a house. You can kind of swim around. Or get it to swim around, speak with animals, or whatever it's called. And then it was like with the Warlock Invocation, where you repeatedly cast False Life. It was really cool. I mean, those kind of builds, they're much more like memes. They're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to live inside a frog? Or how fast can you go in D&D? The other ones are just, I get them, the ones that are much more like power gamery. You just kind of read through spells and abilities, and you're like, oh crap, this synergizes really well with that, like whatever it might be. It might be like, Eldritch Blast with extended spell, what's it called? Or Distant Spell is a crazy range, and you can get Eldritch Spear, and there's also that Barbarian ability that lets you see for a mile. Like, is there something we could do with that? Like, could you have a Barbarian that was flying at 1,000 feet in the air, just sniping people with Eldritch Blast? I think you can get it to like 600 feet away. Like, you can just fly through the air and snipe people down like a satellite cannon. It's just kind of, it's about like looking at what's the mad stuff you can pull off and seeing if it works. Which is, I mean, it's how I enjoy the game, honestly. Funny thing is, when I play characters and when I play D&D with my friends, we're like really basic, not powerful. It's a very heavy like roleplay session. So in a way, the channel is my way of like cranking out all of that, the min-max energy that doesn't get put into my campaign. And I'm like, yeah, this, just have some fun with stuff. But yeah, genuinely, it comes from reading through the books or reading through D&D Beyond Online, looking at cool stuff or cool items and being like, how can we take this in an interesting direction?
Yeah, people always talk about how, and I have talked about how D&D like shouldn't be played like a video game. And yeah, there are definitely roleplay heavy games that you need to change the framework of the way you think about it. Like if you think about like a roleplay heavy game a la like Critical Role kind of style or Knights of Evening Star kind of style, then it's not going to work because you're going to limit yourself to options that, you shouldn't limit yourself to. D&D is an out of the box thinking game. But at the same time, I mean, that video game mentality of go through dungeon, fight super difficult monsters, Dark Souls-esque, World of Warcraft-esque, like there's nothing wrong with that either. You can have a great Diablo-style dungeon crawl with min-maxed characters, epic builds, fighting against really powerful monsters, and have a great time in session about it.
Yeah, it's true. And it was also like, there's a false dichotomy presented there that people are like, if you have a really strong character, clearly your character has no flavor or roleplay potential at all. When it's not true. You can be really strong and you can have a great, power build kind of vibe. It doesn't mean that you're going to steamroller every encounter, and it doesn't mean that your character isn't fun to play. I can't remember. I don't really follow boxing, but I think Mike Tyson maybe said something to the effects of like everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yeah.
And this is true with power builds. A lot of power builds that people make, including ones on my channel, like, and there's lots of people who make them, they seem unstoppable, but when you actually get into combat, stuff does not go to plan. So you can have a plan of like, here's how you kill a demi-lich in one round. When you actually get into a demi-lich's lair, things are probably not going to go that way. So I think sometimes people see a video and they're like, this combo seems ridiculously strong. Like, you're ruining the game. There's no game if you do this. Whereas actually, when you get into the meat of the adventure and, you know, you're running out of resources after an adventuring day, or there's more than one monster, or stuff happens, or you roll low, all of a sudden these power builds, they're not quite as unconquerable as people think. And you do actually have a game going on.
Yeah, exactly. You got a Chad, a Sentinel, tank, Barbarian, but at the end of the day, they roll a natural one in their attack, or the monster crits against them a couple times, then you're gonna have a really different.
It's just one wisdom save against that power build being used against the rest of your party, right? If you're fighting an aboleth, you've min-maxed to shit. You failed one wisdom save, and suddenly you're the one. Your min-max is beating the shit out of your friends.
Exactly.
So, it's never GG, especially when DMs are comfortable adapting, like you know, and that's what being a DM is having fun with the improvisation. So it'll be I think that's the thing. Yeah, definitely. There's room for both, I guess, is what I want to say. Like, you can have these power builds and stuff. They don't necessarily mean that the game is over, and they definitely don't mean that you can't improvise loads and have a great time.
I do get worried, like, as a DM, like, we had a really powerful Warlock fighter. He was really, really strong. By far the best tank, damage dealer, etc. All they really needed to do was heal him, and if he got, like, one crit off, I mean, the boss is down 80, 90, almost 100 hit points. So, what I was always worried about was there were effects that were definitely strong against him. However, I can't just use like mind control effects, wisdom saving throws, charisma saving throws every single fight. It just gets repetitive. Like, they're just going to be fighting against the same effects over and over and over again. And it feels like a gotcha move. Like, I have to consciously use things that shut down this guy's build in order to make the fight like any more thrilling than just heal this dude until all the damage is dealt. But what we ended up doing was just going, okay, I just like, we talked about it, and we just decided, okay, this one effect, we're just going to tune down this one thing, and we had a good campaign for 10 more sessions, and then they killed Orcus.
I mean, yeah, it sounds like you smashed it, man. I mean, that's exactly what you got to do. If it's ruining the campaign or it's damaging what you want to do, you can just chat to people, find like a new way of approaching stuff. But I do, going further on that point, it is like a real problem. What I kind of call the assassin rogue problem, which is where you have a build which can deal, say it can deal insane damage. Like, if an assassin rogue gets off their crit at the start of the encounter, they can just one-shot a boss or like half its hit points. And that kind of gives the DM a problem, because either you have to accept that every boss is just going to be trivialized because of this ability. They're just going to take down half its hit points, everyone else dogpiles it, and it's over. Or you have to double every boss's hit points. But if you're doing that, you're taking away from that player everything that they've invested in. Because if you say to them, well, you obviously don't say this to them, but if they've worked really hard on this build and they've been creative and they've taken sacrifices, right? Like, they're an assassin rogue when they could have been an arcane trickster, right? They've sacrificed stuff to be able to do this. So if you just double the boss's hit points to sort of negate that effect for the sake of your game, then it's kind of saying like, all your hard work, it doesn't matter. I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist. So, I always think of assassin rogues as like the epitome of that concept of where it gets very difficult to make satisfying encounters with some builds, especially if those builds put up huge damage immediately or early in a fight. It gets very, very hard to keep a good game going. And I still haven't quite found the answer to that. Like, usually when I'm running one shots, I keep the level around sort of level 12 maximum, because of that reason. Because I feel like once you hit level 13, which is 7th level spells, you just have, essentially the game's over. I sometimes say the game is over with Simulacrum. Like, as soon as you get to level 7,
yeah,
it's GG.
I got to level 18, no rogues, but yeah, it gets really hard to balance around the party and to make things thrilling when they're that powerful. And, you know, everyone we've said, not we, but a lot of D&D YouTubers have said like D&D is really unbalanced when you get to higher levels. And yeah, that is completely 100% true. Like now that I have the experience, I know that. But you can also just rework their goal instead of just saying, hey, like you need to get this boss down to 0 hit points and that is your goal. You can do what Matt Mercer did with Vecna in campaign 1. The party's goal was not to get Vecna down to 0 hit points. Vecna's a god. He has infinite hit points or whatever. What they needed to do was get these, like, trammels inside of his body. Sure, they still needed to do damage to him to, like, weaken him or whatever. But the end goal was not, no matter how much damage they did, they wouldn't win. What they need to do is succeed strength checks and get these weapons inside of Vecna to banish him from our realm. And that's what I ended up doing with my boss, Orcus. He had an ungodly amount of hit points. What they had to do was, like, go inside of him and have like a dungeon, like a flesh dungeon inside of him, and fight all of these creatures that represented anchors of his soul to this realm. So they fight those, get rid of those, they have one more battle with Orcus to force him through the portal, and boom, they win.
And that sounds fantastic. It sounds so epic, and it does hit the nail on the head, which is the answer to a lot of problems with these kind of builds, is that if you make the success criteria something other than reducing a boss's hit points to 0, you create so many more opportunities for creative thinking and stuff. Whether it's like I love chasing in D&D. I love me a good like race or a chase sequence because there's so much more room for creative spell work, various skill checks and stuff like that. I love that kind of thing. And I guess like combat challenges that aren't like reduce the opponent to 0 hit points does like handle that really nicely. That's a great example. That sounds like a fantastic fight, that Orcus fight.
We have been told that the next evolution of D&D is coming, whatever the hell that means. So, I mean, when we talk about things that we don't like about D&D or things we'd like to change, I mean, what do you want to see changed in Dungeons & Dragons 5.5 or 6th edition? This has been like a running theme on this show, like what we want next.
5.5 edition,
yeah,
next generation. I actually, I really believe it's going to be 5.5. I don't think it's going to be 6 for a start. Like,
I don't think it's going to be 6 either.
I know calling it 6th edition, I know a lot of people have done that. It makes for good clickbait, right?
Yeah, that's why I said that.
Yeah, 6th edition. It's great to throw that in a title, but I would be staggered if they throw away so much of 5th. I anticipate a few class upgrades, definitely. I think they've kind of started moving in that direction anyway with some of the more recent subclass additions to the game. And I definitely think monks will get a little bit of help. The new Dragon Ranger or Drake Warden Ranger got a little bit of help. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few tweaks, maybe some tweaks to the Sorcerer, giving the Sorcerer more spell options. But mainly, I do expect it's just going to be a lot of sort of housekeeping kind of stuff, like more advice on, like they've already sort of started doing it, but like, the new Tasha's Custom Origin and Tasha's Custom Lineage, more of that kind of stuff. Essentially, even more tools for players and DMs to use effectively just ignore the rulebook and putting even more control in the hands of the people who are playing the game rather than kind of the more old school D&D, like by the numbers 3E, kind of much more complex.
But I'm really hoping, and I was talking to David Chappie about this, and he pointed out something really smart. The reason why Ranger was so like underpowered when they came into the game was that they have so many options and so many abilities, but they're not combat based. They're solely roleplay based, about exploring the world and such. And those abilities are great. And did you see Wild Beyond the Witchlight? Like, I haven't read all the way through it, but I heard about this. Have you read it?
I haven't read it, but I've skimmed it like you. I read the ending, I confess. I just skipped right to the end. It's like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so, I mean, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, to get to those endings, there are 100% pacifist roleplay-only routes, no combat required, which I think is awesome, but I will say that right now, as D&D stands, not many classes have roleplay-centric abilities or options, other than the Ranger. So I think that improvement, that's something I was hoping for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can do a lot with spells, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You've got the Druidcraft, Prestidigitation, Thaumaturgy, Minor Illusion. Like, these are definitely useful roleplay abilities, but definitely people like Barbarians, people complain a lot about when we're talking about barbarians. Barbarians are great in combat, but they're useless out of it, and it is true.
Grog?
I mean, well, there are obviously great barbarians, of course, like as we've seen, but they struggle with making any kind of charisma check. You know what I mean? A lot of barbarians want to be intimidating, and if you're playing D&D by the book, that's a charisma check. You've probably dumped charisma.
Yep.
So letting people intimidate based off strength is a great answer to that. So I wouldn't mind seeing more of that kind of stuff as well, more open-ended
Options.
Yeah, options for I mean, I don't know what I guess if I was just a dreamer, if I was just really like what would be amazing. I want everyone to be able to do everything. I want barbarians to be able to cast spells. I want wizards to be able to fight like with blade slings. I mean, like but it turns into a muddy wash of everything. But really, like in my heart, that's kind of what I want. I want more options given to players all the time.
I mean, giving simple spells to like a class can completely change their playstyle. I mean, look how different Eldritch Knight feels to any other fighter subclass or Arcane Trickster.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they kind of do that. To be fair, an elegant way of doing that is with ritual casting flavor spells. Like they give the Beast Totem Barbarian a few ritual cast, speak with animals kind of stuff. I think that's an awesome way. I could see more classes get that type of thing. I think monks, especially, I don't know, maybe they do. I haven't looked into the monk subclasses in a while, but definitely I would give more classes ritual spellcasting for non-combat. Essentially, because a ritual essentially says, here's a spell you can't use in combat, right? You can't spend 11 minutes casting a spell in combat, so every ritual spell is out. So I think that's what I would... Yeah, I think that'd be really nice. Maybe giving more rituals out there to give spellcasting options and roleplay via spells to people like that.
If you were a dreamer and you could do it, would you? And we were talking about this earlier, so that's why I'm bringing it up with the 5.5 segment. But if you had unlimited power for D&D, would you remove paralysis and what's it called? Not the one where you turn to stone.
Yeah.
Whatever
petrification.
Petrification. If you could remove paralysis and petrification, would you do it?
But for players, DMs to use on players, I would be so abusive with my power. In a second, I would take them out of the game because I genuinely defy anyone to have enjoyed a moment where you were paralyzed in a fight. I really mean that. It's also if you can paralyze the enemy, hell yeah. As a player. Oh God, it's awful. So yeah, I would take them out right away, because it's this is a roundabout example, but I was watching a great video essay by a Mario content creator called Steve, and I don't know if you know him, but basically there's this game called Super Mario Sunshine, and every time in Super Mario Sunshine you collect a blue coin, this pop-up message appears on screen. And it says, congratulations, you got a blue coin. Do you want to save? And he made the point that made collecting blue coins so awful. Because every time you want to be playing the game, every time you grab one, you have to stop the game to click through this menu to say, great, thank you for telling me. That's taking like 1 or 2 seconds out of your gameplay experience. And it is super annoying. Anyone who's played that game knows it's super annoying. So taking 40 minutes out of your gameplay experience because of these stun effects... I know I'm going in circles. Like I said, we said, oh, what's your pet peeve? Something you kind of gets on your nerves, and I'm just ranting endlessly, like foaming at the fucking mouth about these effects.
Hey, that completely fits to me. Because when you look at a game, like so many games, the stun or CC effects are like the least favorite. Like I played tons of the MMO Destiny, tons of that game. But when they first introduced a new element, which is a big deal, there's elements in Destiny, you got lightning and fire, they introduced ice. And with ice, you can freeze people, you can stun them, you can freeze them in place. And when it was introduced, people freaking hated it. Because even though you're frozen for 1 second, like that's just not fun. Like your momentum is cut, you can't move, and you're just sitting there sad and just paralyzed as you get helplessly gunned in the face by the enemy. Like where's the fun in that? They nerfed it so that the freeze only lasts like 0.4 seconds, so that while the enemy can get some positioning advantage, you're not gonna get instantly gunned down. But at the same time, like back then, freeze was just so oppressive, and in D&D, it's not like you're getting petrified for 0.5 seconds of IRL time. You're getting petrified for what essentially feels like 25 minutes as you wait for your next turn.
Yeah, that's exactly it, yeah. It is just that people want to play the game, so more ways to play the game is good, and taking taking these effects out of the game. I'm 100% for that, taking those conditions out of the hands of DMs. I'd say players can do them to enemies, hell yeah, because the DM's playing all the time. But if you're in a team of 6 and you're high level, wizard turns can take like 20 minutes anyway. Yeah, let's keep the game going, 100%.
Because when you get knocked down, also another thing, when you get knocked down, like a healing spell will bring you back up, or a healing potion will bring you back up. It's like infamously easy to get someone back up from going down. And now I think it's way too easy. Like I want it to be harder. But at the same time, like it's possible when you're petrified. If you're petrified at level 7, sorry, you're done.
Yeah.
That might be end of a character.
Yeah, it's a side quest in itself. Let's level up a couple of levels, get a greater restoration.
Let's find a scroll in a forgotten dungeon to bring Bob back from the brink of the end. You're welcome.
It's
man.
true. It's true. I mean, it's a great point. Like, why is getting knocked out in like brutal combat less punishing than failing one save?
Stabbed in the gut, you're all good. You can get back up just fine. But you have a little bit of a cramp in your entire full body cramp.
Yeah,
you're done. Absolutely, yeah. I actually, I was not down for this, but you know what? Now, if they got removed, I might be down for it. Honestly, I'm not even a player. I never play.
Oh, I get a good mix. So I get a lot of player pet peeves like that. But I mean, it's just the one thing. It very rarely happens. It's just when it does happen, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah,
to lose that much time.
I've never felt more guilty as a DM than when like my party were going on a train heist and they were fighting demon cowboys, and one of them summoned a Vrock, and it just instantly knocked out our ranger, with a multi-attack. And he didn't get back up the whole fight.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And,
Yeah, I mean, it happens, though. So you've got to accept that it happens.
Yeah, it
like,
happens,
if it's not happening too regularly, I think it really becomes a crime if it's across multiple encounters. If you ever... No one likes to feel picked on. And even... I think this is where metagaming becomes very healthy. Important as a DM, right? It's like, sure, intelligent enemies might know to target the wizard first. If you're playing, a demon horde, I mean, demons are kind of dumb, maybe devils. If you're playing like a devil horde very efficiently and correctly, with proper respect to their intelligence modifiers, they probably would always be targeting down the wizard first, because they know that that's what's going to kill them if they let him, do what he wants to do. But at the same time, it's like, if it's every encounter, this guy's just getting bodied in the first round, that's kind of where you've got to be like, let him have his fun. Like, we've got to split the pain around a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say, like, if the party, if like, devils are targeting the wizard, and the party are like, okay, let's all put ourselves around the wizard to protect him, and they do that, like, I'm not gonna think in my head, oh, well, yeah, they're gonna put themselves around the wizard, but they don't know that the devils can just fly over their little shield barricade. Haha, I'm gonna target the wizard. No, alright, the party have acknowledged a flaw in their design, and they have tried to fix it. I will let them have their fix, okay? I'm not just gonna go, your fix doesn't work because of an ability that you can't possibly counter,
100%. I mean, it's like I say, it goes back one more time to feeling like a superhero. Like, as far as I'm concerned, if the DM is on the player's side, if you want your players to feel good and have a good time, it sounds like an obvious thing, right? But, from some of the stuff you read online, then the choices you make should be quite obvious, always. Like, you always put the fun first. Sometimes the dice will screw you over, and it'll go a lot worse than you anticipate. But that is just life. And everyone knows, and you can kind of chuckle about it. It's just if it's every game people are targeting down, or if you're ever playing in a game and you feel like your DM is just bodying you every single turn, just have a word with them and be like, come on, man, is there a way we can either ease up the difficulty or power me up a little bit? I think that's kind of why my content is... people enjoy it, is because people want to get to the point where then they never want to feel like they're not doing anything. They want to feel like they have an impact. And I think like fun combos and power builds are a great way to kind of get to that point. Not like I have a series called weird things you can do in D&D. It's not great ideas you can do in D&D. Some of them are amazing, but like some of them are just they're strange, or like they're not like something that's going to happen every time. And you're always going to get people who kind of miss the point. Same with all of, I think that's just whenever you're communicating on a wide level, it's just going to happen. So yeah, but
it's part of the game, man.
It's part of the game of life and the content creation game.
Awesome. But yeah, I mean, one last piece of advice for DMs or players out there who want to get that epic feel in their game. They're feeling like things are getting too mundane. They've been fighting zombies and bandits for so long, and they want to make it feel more epic. They want to get that massive encounter where there's cheers at the end and all that. How do you make your games epic, and what advice would you give to DMs and players to get that feeling out of their own games?
Just one piece of advice for that, and this is actually true of all of life. If you want to get epic moments out of anything, it's true as well in D&D. The real secret is commitment. If you commit crap out of your boss, or commit the crap out of your players, or your PC, and you go in with the voice, you make an epic speech, you go full on anime, like full on nerd. It's like if you watch the Yu-Gi-Oh TV show, they're not just playing their cards. They're like, my deck has no pathetic cards. It's all that. You throw everything into it. With the role play and the screaming and the running, get dressed up if you have to. Just that full commitment, and that's how you'll drag so much fun out of this 40-year-old game. And yeah, if the one word is commit, just commit everything, and then the dice can do what the hell they want because you're having a great time. But yeah, that's it. The one way is just everything into it all the time. So extra.
I did not know what you were going to say, but that's better than anything I could have anticipated. That was really good. And all that's left to do is to ask Will, dude, from D&D Shorts, what have you got going on the channel?
This second we called, I just uploaded a video, which is like the latest the top 5 most banned races in D&D, where we talk about why stuff is banned. Essentially, it's the most powerful races in D&D as well. Which is a lot of fun. I got a couple of really cool shorts coming out. Is this going live on Saturday, right? Or Sunday?
This is going live on Sunday.
Okay, so there'll have been a short that went out yesterday, and there'll be a short going out tomorrow, ideally. Just 2 cool little combos. And then I've got a video coming out next week on, the top 5 underrated but awesome 3rd level spells, which I'm aiming to get out for next Wednesday. So that's probably going to be the next big upload, which should be a lot of fun to give you a bit of perspective on spells that aren't Fireball or Lightning Bolt, but are actually still really good at 3rd level. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm cooking with at the moment.
Awesome, man. Looking forward to it. If you guys enjoyed this episode of Roll for Insight, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then please subscribe to Crispy's Tavern as well as D&D Shorts on YouTube, linked in the description. If you want to see more episodes of this podcast, if you're listening on audio, then please follow whatever podcast platform you're on. And finally, if you're on YouTube, then please do leave your own comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment crazy combo to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. We will both see you all next time. Farewell.